Yuji's origins have remained a mystery for almost 240 chapters. I know some instances of his birth were revealed, but that doesn't mean we know the full story behind our main character. For example, in chapter 214 of the manga, whilst Yuji was throwing the entire kitchen sink at Sukuna, the king of all curses is baffled by Yuji's raw physical power, and then goes on to state, "I get it, the boy is from that time," as he is then abruptly attacked by Yuji. But that would be the only thing that hints to Yuji's true origins, insinuating that Yuji could possibly be from the Heian period. However, that wouldn't necessarily mean that Yuji was a human during that time, but instead a cursed spirit. Huh? I'm sure you guys have an insane amount of questions about this, but towards the end this will totally make sense to you. So how exactly could Yuji be a cursed spirit? Well, from what we know is that Gege Akutami is a mastermind at connecting the dots between Jujutsu Kaisen, Buddhism and Japanese folklore. This is the pattern we must follow to unveil the truth behind Yuji's true form, as well as understanding why our protagonist has this crazy level of physical prowess which all comes naturally to him. But before we dissect why I believe that Yuji could be a cursed spirit, this theory is linked to my more recent video discussing how Yuji could take control over Sukuna and how they are both related. So I would suggest to watch that first and then come to this if you haven't already. Like I just mentioned, Akutami is a mastermind when it comes to symbolism from Japanese folklore and Buddhism. He tends to leave little hints where no one can find them, and then he refers to those hints to reveal something massive. He will definitely do the same with Yuji, but I feel like we are slowly piecing this giant puzzle together. So what is Yuji Itadori and where does his unexpected power come from? The first part of this theory which we are going to dwell into would be the Japanese folklore tale which may have a connection to both Ryomen Sukuna and Yuji Itadori. I know that we've covered a ton of these Japanese folklore tales before, but so far we've been spot on with quite a few of them. This tale we are about to dive deep on stems from the Handbook of Japanese Mythology written by Michael Ashkenazi. This story would also originate from the famous Nihon Shoki, which we've covered a fair few times already. Anyways, this would date all the way back to 72 AD, which would be the Yayoi period in Japan. As for the story itself, it was written in the early 700s, which would be in the late Asuka period and the beginning of the Nara period, which of course is befitting for a story like Jujutsu Kaisen. This story would originate around two sons from the Emperor Keiko. The keyword here would be twins. It's something I mentioned a lot in my previous theory video, and would further solidify the idea that Yuji and Sukuna are one and the same. Anyways, these twins had very similar names. The older brother was named Oso no Mikoto, and the younger brother was also called Uso no Mikoto. Apologies for my pronunciation. Anywho, according to the Handbook of Japanese Mythology written by Michael Ashkenazi, basically what happened was that Oso no Mikoto, the older brother, had displeased Emperor Keiko, not showing up for meals and taking women that the emperor wanted for himself. And so Emperor Keiko, who was angry at him, asked the younger brother, Uso no Mikoto, to teach his brother some manners. So naturally, Uso no Mikoto crushed his twin older brother, then tore off his arms and legs, wrapped them in a straw mat, and threw them away. So Uso no Mikoto, who was the younger brother, was brutal, and Emperor Keiko subsequently became terrified of his son. Uso no Mikoto, the younger brother, eventually became known as Yamato Takeru, and was granted the Kusanagi, which is the grass-cutting sword. This is actually a weapon which we covered months back when I had broken down the true purpose of Megami Shikigami and what it could grant. Everything seems to be aligning, feels like we've got a string of theories that all connect together, but I'll be sure to cover what the Kusanagi is after we finish this folklore tale. So anyways, Uso no Mikoto had a pretty sick sense of humor, burning a king and his clan in their houses and renaming it Yakitsu, which means burning fort, making a pun on yaki, which also means roast. After conquering lands, becoming a hero, and emperor after achieving many feats, after his death when his wives and children assembled to construct his tomb, his spirit transformed into a giant white bird and flew away. Brutal, a sadistic sense of humor, and an association with the color white. Who exactly does that remind you of? My theory is that Ryomen Sukuna in this manga is supposed to be Uso no Mikoto, the younger brother, or at the very least the incarnation of his cursed energy, and Yuji is a reincarnation of Oso no Mikoto, who is the older brother. To me, that explains why Yuji is somewhat able to stop Sukuna from taking over his body, but cannot completely restrain him. Whether or not reincarnation is a thing in this manga or not, I think it's an interesting point to bring up, especially since Ryomen Sukuna has actually appeared in classical Japanese history text. This theory and tale was made 3 years ago. I would say their Reddit name, but I'll probably get demonetized, so I'll link you all down to this theory down below. So essentially this story centers itself around the twins, and I'm 80 to 90% sure that Yuji and Sukuna are in fact twins. Now this Japanese tale tells us a lot about the possible dynamic between Yuji and Sukuna. Yuji was the one who could attract the power of the people, but Sukuna was just an evil demonic person who had a god complex. So now before we dive into part 2 of this theory, let's understand the Kusanagi a bit more. Essentially, Uso no Mikoto, the younger brother, was granted this divine weapon called Kusanagi no Tsurugi, which is one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan. Its original name was Heavenly Sword of Gathering Clouds, but it was then changed to Grass Cutting Sword. Of course, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi was gifted to Yamato Takeru, who of course is Uso no Mikoto, the younger brother. This divine weapon came in handy when he was led onto an open grassland during a hunting expedition by a treacherous warlord. The lord had fiery arrows to ignite the grass on fire and trap Yamato Takeru on this field so that he would burn to death. He also killed the warrior's horse to prevent his escape. Desperately, Yamato Takeru used the Kusanagi no Tsurugi to cut back the grass and remove fuel from the fire, but in doing so he discovered that the sword enabled him to control the wind and cause it to move in the direction of his swing, meaning the Kusanagi no Tsurugi was a mystical weapon in some ways. So now back to Jujutsu Kaisen. We know how much power a cursed tool has in the world of Jujutsu. So I believe that the Kusanagi no Tsurugi is one of the 3 most powerful cursed tools in Jujutsu Kaisen and could have possibly been a part of Sukuna's arsenal. So now onto the second part of this theory. What exactly does that folklore tale have to do with Yuji being a cursed spirit? What we can drill into our heads is how Yuji and Sukuna may be twins, but what did Yuji have to become for Sukuna to gain a form so powerful? So for this we will need to go all the way back to chapter 143 of the manga, the moment that we were revealed that Yuji was indeed manipulated by Kenjaku as a death painting womb. What we understand about death painting wombs is how they are a crossbreed between humans and curses, as evident with the likes of Choso, Eso and Kichizu. Now it would be in chapter 134 where Choso states, "I have 3 parents, my mother, the curse that impregnated her, and the man who mixed his blood with theirs." So what does this mean? In this instance, Kenjaku would be the man who mixed his blood with theirs, but who or what could this curse be? I'm sure that Kenjaku wouldn't just use any curse, but something with incredible power. So if we keep that in mind, it still doesn't explain why Kenjaku needed to infiltrate Yuji's mother, Kaori Itadori, and then of course birth Yuji through the help of Jin Itadori. Some could say it's because Kenjaku wanted to take advantage of Kaori's cursed technique, but I highly doubt that. This all stems from the lineage of the Itadori family and its relation to Ryomen Sukuna. So let's investigate a bit more behind Kenjaku's motives and how Yuji is actually a cursed spirit. From what we know so far is that Yuji is a death painting womb and is the son of Kenjaku. Right now Kenjaku's goal is to evolve humanity into a new era of curses, reiterating that the golden age is slowly returning. So Kenjaku has his obsession with optimizing cursed energy and pushing Japan into this new world through the absorption of Master Tengen. One thing that should be noted is the theme of perversion of the previous body's goals. This can be seen most clearly in Suguru Geto, who believed those with cursed energy were indeed the evolved humans and wanted them to live together as a family. While this is similar to Kenjaku's end goal, it is completely perverted so that now those same Jujutsu sorcerers are killing each other in the culling games. Kenjaku's use of Geto's body is to counter Geto's own ideology, so much so that his soul attempts to fight back, which we all witnessed happening in chapter 91 in the Shibuya incident arc. If Kenjaku's goals were to align with Geto's own, I'm sure that Geto would not lash out like this. As we have seen time and time again, Geto is honorable and would rather be used as a martyr or sacrifice if it means his goal is carried out. He gives the Jujutsu world a fair warning before waging war, feeling great regret for having to resort to such methods, confronting Gojo man to man and discussing his goals, and showing respect to sorcerers who would self-sacrifice to save their comrades. This is where things begin to get interesting. Chapter 60 of the manga, Eso would reveal the nature of the most evil sorcerer to have existed, which we know as Kenjaku, but previously known as Noritoshi Kamo. We learn that during the Meiji era, Kenjaku had targeted a girl whose body allowed her to birth the child of a cursed spirit. She didn't understand how this all came to be, as she was then ostracized from the family, forcing her to rush with her child's corpse to a temple in the mountains. This temple was run by Jujutsu sorcerers, but apparently that was where her luck ran out. This chapter would also go on to reveal how during that time their mother had 9 pregnancies and 9 abortions. The first 3 death painting wombs were powerful enough to enter the special grade category, and that would be Choso, Eso, and Kichizu. Eso would state, was their mother's resentment the source of this cursed energy or something else? Choso, Eso, and Kichizu also have no memories whatsoever about their mother. Now back to the temple which she escaped to during the Meiji era, which would date between 1868 to 1912. This was seemingly a place where people who had cursed energy would flee to for safety. So this would obviously be the Tombs of the Star Corridor, or even Jujutsu High when it was still seen as a temple, but I believe that Kenjaku was a core part in Master Tengen's team, or even Jujutsu High, but disguised himself as Noritoshi Kamo. The research behind cursed energy, especially during that time, must have been intense, with the likes of Master Tengen leading the way. Noritoshi Kamo's research was originally made for good, but after he was infiltrated by Kenjaku, he then took advantage of his position at this temple and used all the research to further his concept of the death painting wombs. So now back to the main timeline. Kenjaku mentioned how he plans on setting off a bomb during these culling games. As for what it is, we still don't know. Right now all the sorcerers are occupied with watching the battle between Gojo and Sukuna. But what is Kenjaku plotting behind the scenes? My theory is that Kenjaku altered the bodies of so many people to initiate the incarnations from hundreds of years ago, but these incarnated sorcerers, death painting wombs, and even Yuji are nowhere near their full form or true purpose for what Kenjaku wants to turn them into. We are constantly reminded about the golden age of sorcerers, but we don't know what kind of cursed spirits they had to face other than Ryomen Sukuna. So my educated guess would be that this bomb would be turning each of these sorcerers who Kenjaku's had a binding vow with, as well as the death painting wombs which he manipulated, into the evolved humans, or in other words, cursed spirits near the same level as Ryomen Sukuna. They would become the catalyst for Kenjaku to force Japan into the New World, and through the ability of Master Tengen, as well as his cursed spirit manipulation, this idea is somewhat plausible. So we won't be having just your typical incarnated sorcerers, but instead incarnated cursed spirits from the Golden Age who surpass the boundaries of what it means to be the true form of humans. These select few would be the only ones who understand true Jujutsu, just like Ryomen Sukuna. So how does Yuji fall into this category? That's simply because at the end of chapter 136, Kenjaku states, "Goodbye Yuji Itadori, I expect much from you." I believe that's because Yuji is Kenjaku's first true success of a crossbreed between human and curse. I would say Choso, Eso, and Kichizu are failures in that aspect, but Yuji has stepped over that boundary between humans and curses, exactly like Master Tengen, but Yuji is on a completely different level. The likes of Ryomen Sukuna and Master Tengen resemble curses rather than humans. Yuji is part of this group. Currently Sukuna has not entered his final state. That may be because Kenjaku is waiting on someone or something to initiate this phase. So I don't think that the sorcerers will be fighting against just a full form Sukuna, but they will be fighting several cursed spirits on a similar scale. All they need is for Kenjaku to pull this trigger, and we will witness the Golden Age truly return right before our eyes. I think during this part, Yuji will finally understand who or what he is, and that would be the older twin brother of Ryomen Sukuna. So what does all of this mean? This means that Kenjaku has prepared everything for this moment alone. Yuji will transcend and finally have his Honored One moment, claiming himself on the battlefield as Ryomen Sukuna's older twin brother. As to how this could play out, could lead to Sukuna attempting to consume Yuji to enter his final form, or Sukuna might enter that state without needing to eat Yuji, who knows. But ultimately, Yuji is a perfect crossbreed between human and curse, and he could possibly become something as devastating as Ryomen Sukuna. I also do think that through Kenjaku forcing everyone into the new world, he will summon incarnated cursed spirits in the bodies of those he has manipulated, but their powers and abilities could be on the level of Sukuna's or just under. Then honestly the sorcerer's only hope would be Yuji and Gojo. Anyways, this theory did have quite a few twists and turns, but I do think that Yuji would elevate onto levels unknown through his true origins of being half curse and half human. His power may even rival that of a full form Sukuna. This is just a theory at the end of the day, so don't kill me too much, but I'd love to see what you guys think of this and what Yuji could truly be. As always, like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you all in the next one.